Hello, aloha and servus. Welcome to Koholuna, Living Spiritual Greatness. I'm your host, Meiwengel, and I want to invite you on a journey to get to know and to be reminded of your spiritual greatness and how you can live it consciously so that you can create the life you desire. We are all spiritual beings here on earth to have a human experience, and when we focus on this, we are able to create paradise on earth. Come join me in this movement to make this world a better place by letting go of our fears, old patterns, attachments, and resistance. Aloha and welcome, my beautiful beamings out there. I hope you're well. I'm recording this today because I wanted to talk to you about fear because I feel especially because of the actual situation all over the world, there's a lot of fearful thinking that's coming up, that's being fired up, especially, I don't want to say by the media per se, because I feel, at least for me, seeing it from here, because I'm not a very much TV watcher. I'm more of I get a lot of information through Facebook and Instagram and through friends and talking to people personally, but like I've seen posts on the internet that could cause fearful thinking, and so I've decided to make an episode about it because I think there's a couple of things, especially in this time that we have right now. There's so much we can do to, on one hand, prevent it, but on the other hand, also, in case it does come up, we can find a way to transform it for ourselves, and to see the possibility that a fearful thought brings for us in that moment. So one of the things that helped me realize or be more aware of what fearful thinking means was actually when I remember reading Marianne Williamson's book Return to Love, and I remember like in the beginning it had one sentence that said that we are in a society where we're taught to be afraid, to be in fear of things, like fear of not having enough, fear of someone doing something bad to us, fear of, and so on, getting sick, fear of, so many things. And the thing is that we have to, if we look into it, it's basically us returning to love, because fear is basically the absence of love. Just like if you look at light, there's no darkness, right? Darkness only exists. Darkness is only the absence of light. So to me, fearful thoughts or having fears is that. It's because it's missing love. And that's like one of the first realizations I had about fears, that we're actually, okay, so this is what fears are doing with us, right? Okay, so basically they are that. And then, because I'm telling you right now, because this is like all of the time that I had in the time when I started to overcome my fears. Some of you that might have followed my other podcasts or might have followed other things that I've done, I got to a point seeing fears around me that I've decided I'm gonna take up fears, because the more I get rid of my fears, the more lightness I'm going to bring into my life. And it's actually been like that for a couple of years, that I always choose at least one fear per year that I want to go and take on. But I want to tell you, when I started this was because I realized two fears basically in the same time. And one was my fear of the ocean. And we're talking about, I'm someone that learned swimming very early. I was like, my parents supported me swimming from little on. But I remember, I think it was when I hit puberty and we had moved to Nicaragua, where we were spending times at the beaches sometimes. And I remember the more and more time passed by, I just felt like not going into the water. Like I would do if some friends would go, but I didn't think it was something bad, because in that time it's more like, oh, I need to get a tan. But when I got to older age, I remember it kept on going, like in lakes, and because I was living then in Germany, and I remember having this boyfriend tell me, hey, let's go for a swim in a lake. And I was like, okay, well, sure, why not? And I went in because I thought, oh, I wasn't that aware of that fear. I was just like, okay, I know I'm a good swimmer. So we went in there, and I realized like a couple of meters in, after I couldn't feel the ground anymore, I couldn't my feet wouldn't touch the ground anymore. I realized a huge panic come up, and I was so fast back out of the water. But again, I was living in Munich. There's no ocean nearby, so I mean, you know what? And you don't always have to go into the lake, so who cares? I wasn't putting too much attention to that until the year my cousin passed away in a car accident. And I remember that my sister and I felt like, hey, we wanted to spend more time with his brothers and sister. And we knew that they were scuba diving. So we were like, oh, let's learn that too, so we can spend even more time with them. And so basically, my sister and I went out to learn scuba diving to hang out more with my cousins. And what happened was that I realized, because we had thought my sister might have a problem with it, because I was more of the swimmer. I used to do water ballet when I was a child. But we realized very fast that she didn't have a problem at all. She was like so calm, and it was so easy for her to learn everything. And I was the one that had a panic attack in the middle of the pool day. Because if you know about scuba diving, you have a pool day before you go into open water. And so it took me an extra dive to finally get the certification. And so for me, every time to do that was, okay, I want to overcome this fear of the ocean. So right there was where I noticed, I'm going to start scuba diving to overcome this fear. But I remember like the first dives I did, the one was okay, another one was so. So I sort of like, it took me like a little push to that. During the same time, I realized that also that, and because it's sort of like this is all happening in the same year, I started to have a burnout, which is basically a form of depression because of your work. And I started to go into therapy. And I remember coming back from one of those therapy sessions, sitting in front of my sister, telling her about how the session was. And then suddenly I just bursted out in tears. And I was just like, you know what? The biggest fear I have is to be myself, because I don't even know who I am. I'm so afraid to be me that I don't even know who I am, because I've never allowed myself to be, because I've only been acting for everybody else, because I just want everybody to like me. So I don't, I don't even know who I am, because I've always just pretended so that everybody would like me, which ultimately is what happened, what brought me to that depression, because it was a constant inner fight. And it's a whole other story. I'm not going to talk about it right now. But that was like a huge fear inside of me, to allow myself to be the true me, right next to finding out who the true me was, and allowing myself to let that true me come out. And so those fears sort of walked with each other. And it's another thing that I've noticed, that sometimes big fears like that really go hand in hand together. Because the interesting thing, because I started also around the same time as when the Hawaiian philosophy came into my life, and I started to learn to see what patterns I had, how the fears would come up, what would trigger me, how to read those things better, and to learn how to change them. And now this is a little spiritual part, but for me, I truly believe in that, because I remember I was reading one of Serge Kahili King's books about the Hawaiian philosophy, and I remember he was talking about the god of the ocean in the Hawaiian mythology, that he was the one that was the one that ruled over the depth of the ocean, and the depth of the ocean was stood for your inner strength. And for me, when I read that, it was like, okay, so if I overcome one of those fears, it's going to help me overcome the other fear as well. So I started working on it from two different angles. And the interesting thing is that I think when I really got this, and through meditation and through some of the practices that I do, I managed to overcome this fear more and more. I mean, when you have something that's so deep, I'm not going to tell you that it's going to be gone by one thing. Yeah. So it's sort of like, it's like the onion. So you have like several layers that you have to get out of. But knowing that, realizing that sort of helped me. And the interesting thing is now, if you see me, on one hand, I love being in the ocean. I'm not afraid anymore. That fear is not there. I'm not going to say, I'm still a little respectful with caves, and I try not to go into caves scuba diving, but I've managed to overcome the fear to take off the mask underwater. I'm scuba diving at night. I love scuba diving. I also don't mind going into a little bit deeper. And I love scuba diving. Like, overcoming that fear gave me so much beautiful space where I can go into now. It's like, oh my God, it's there. And now, like, it opened up a whole new world to me that I wouldn't have seen if I would have stayed, in front of it, instead of going through. And the same with my own authenticity. Also, one of the reasons why I started to come back to this podcast in English, because I feel that I'm most authentic when I speak English. Because I feel that that's I'm as a mixy, as a hapa, I feel that one of my main things is to be the bridge between cultures, between people, and English is basically the language that does that. So I think that's why I feel most comfortable in it. But anyway, also, and that's one of the things that I've learned, because I overcame the fear of being myself, it's so beautiful because it allowed me to go into a life that actually makes me happy, I feel so much lightness. I feel like sometimes when I compare myself, because sometimes you walk around and you get reminded of a couple of years ago, and I get a glimpse again, I get, like a memory of how I used to feel, and knowing that I don't feel like that anymore. I don't feel the pressure anymore to have to pretend for someone. I feel like I'm allowed to be myself. And within that, and this is like the most beautiful part about it, because I learned to be myself, to be my authentic self, I am so much more available to help my community, to help my people around me. And because I know that in the beginning, one of the thought patterns or attachments that I had to overcome was that I thought that it was very egotistical if you just take care of yourself. But the wonderful thing is, if you do that, you're going to have so much more strength to be there for your community. And I know it sounds a little counterintuitive, but that's how it is. And if you take care of yourself, and it's one of the things that you do when you start to look at your fears and overcome your fears, is that you start being mindful with yourself. A lot of the times we don't allow ourselves to see our feelings. So how can I know if I'm afraid? And I know that there's some people out there, because I used to be one like that too, that's like, oh yeah, no, I'm not afraid. I can do anything. And it's okay, but it's also okay to be afraid, because the fun thing is, and that's one of the things that I want to encourage you, is the moment you start looking at your fears, they can show you a whole new world behind there. if you dare to look into them. And if you allow yourself to acknowledge that you have them. It's okay to have them, and it's also okay to let them go. I'm not saying grab your fear and let yourself be pulled down by it, but grab your fear and allow yourself to, like to work on it, to see what's happening. Like even for me right now, with the whole situation that's happening right now, I am very mindful of what kind of fears come up. Because that way I can see, okay, what am I actually really afraid of? And that's the interesting part. When you ask yourself, what am I actually really afraid of? And then you start going and looking deeper into yourself, and you go like, okay, am I afraid of not having enough? Am I afraid someone else taking something from me? And then you realize that you might have a fear that feels so unlogical. It's like, why should I be afraid of not having anything if I have everything? And that's the thing. That just triggers something that might have happened earlier. But the thing is to just look into that and to see, and this is like, because it would go too deep because it's different for everybody. Every person is a little bit different, but find ways to see for yourself, like how can you transform your thinking, your thoughts, your feelings. For some people, it's really good to go into meditation. Back then, when I I had one key meditation that I did with my fear of the ocean and also my fear of being myself. Because, like I said, for me, they were like two fears that belong together. So I went into a special guided journey. It was like a mix of a shamanic journey with Hawaiian inner garden work. And I went in there and it started transforming. And it was sort of like about forgiveness, but not about forgiveness. And it was about letting go. And then you transform that and it happens and you let it go. For other people, it's important to, reprogram the sentences. So if you see a fear come up, start reprogramming. Start telling yourself, I am fine. I have everything I need. Like right now, maybe you heard the meditation already that I also posted here on the podcast. And it shows you how to, program yourself into pono, into harmonious energy, so that you get out of the fearful thinking. Because that's the other thing, that because of the fearful thinking, fearful thoughts, even though they are the absence of love, fearful thoughts are still, they have such a big weight. So they always feel like they're weighing us down. And the moment we learn to let go of these fearful thoughts, that's when we start moving forward. That's when we can be lighter and move freely and move into whatever energy, whatever flow we want to go. That's how our flow works. It's like how all the tension leaves our body. And that's how we that's how we can start creating better once we have this tension out of our system. So yeah, so that's it for today, to just give you a little, teaser on how to deal with your fears. Because I think that's the big deal that we're going through, especially in these times, because of what's happening in the world and all the media, because it's the first time we're living through something like this. And we can concentrate, and this is like the slight difference that I say. On one hand, it's about looking at your fears and letting them go, different to having the fears and letting them pull you down. Okay, I know sometimes it's a very thin line, but that's like where I want to take you. And I think it's very important for us to look at the fears and transform those for us, to bring ourselves into the positive energy, because that's how we're going to change whatever's happening right now. There's such a huge opportunity in the things that are happening right now. And like I said earlier, a fearful thought, or the energy of fear, is the absence of love. And if you look at what's happening right now, you can focus on the fearful thoughts of all the bad things that are happening. But if you change your focus and bring it to the things that are filled with love, the amazing things that are happening, wow, that just makes your heart bloom. Like Look at all the good things that's happening to nature. Look at all the amazing communities that are being built right now. Because they're moving, because they're, instead of hanging on to the bad things, they are putting themselves out there into the energy of solution, of healing, of light. And with that, so much positive information or great information can come through your, how do you say, your intuition, if you let go of this tension of the fear. With that, I wanna leave you. If you have any questions to that, or if you feel like you would love to have someone that could go through your fears with you, I always call them triggers or topics that we have that come up, to transform those, to bring more lightness into your life so that it doesn't feel so heavy anymore, to take out all the tension. Send me a text, let's talk about it. We can see how I can, and then we can see together how I can help you and support you in this situation right now. And with this, thank you so much again for tuning in, and sending you a big aloha, a lot of love, a lot of gratefulness. Mahalo. Thank you so much for tuning in. Mwah. Bye.